Boy, oh boy, do we have some big breaking news for you guys. So Politico is reporting this. Exclusive. Supreme Court has voted to overturn abortion rights, draft opinion shows. Quote, we hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled, Justice Alito writes in an initial majority draft circulated inside the court. So this is, they did it, man. Or they're actually going to do it. The decision will officially drop in 2 months, or I think it's 2 months. Let's go through some of this here. Reporting from Josh Gerstein and Alexander Ward. The Supreme Court has voted to strike down the landmark Roe v. Wade decision according to an initial draft majority opinion written by Justice Samuel Alito, circulated inside the court and obtained by Politico. The draft opinion is a full-throated, unflinching repudiation of the 1973 decision, which guaranteed federal constitutional protections of abortion rights, and a subsequent 1992 decision, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, that largely maintained the right. Quote, Roe was egregiously wrong from the start, Alito writes. We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled, he writes in the document, labeling as the opinion of the court. Quote, it's time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. So here's what's going to happen. Obviously, the Supreme Court has previously ruled that you have the right to get an abortion, and there are caveats in there, and there's nuance in there. Like, they had the trimester standard originally, and then I think later on they updated that trimester standard to something a little bit different. But the idea was that the government can't tell you before a certain line in the pregnancy that they're interjecting and saying you're not allowed to get this procedure. If they turn it over to the states, what's going to happen is all the red states, or virtually all the red states, are going to pass laws that outright ban abortion. So you already have these things called TRAP laws, which stands for Targeted Restriction of Abortion Procedure Laws, where they overregulate abortion providers and basically try to snuff them out of business on purpose by putting so much red tape up. But still, on paper, it's illegal for conservative states to have overly onerous restrictions on abortion in terms of trying to stop it too early in the pregnancy. Well, now, with this decision, what's going to happen is they could just pass laws in all the red states that say abortion is legal here, abortion is illegal here. And it's going to have a big effect. Now, my guess is, based on the history of this sort of stuff, when you ban abortion, like they will in, over 20 states in the country, it's not like the abortions actually go away. So in some instances, people might just go underground and get unsafe abortions, which of course would be a disaster. In other cases, they might not be able to get the abortion at all, and they'll effectively be forced to carry the baby to term. And in other instances, perhaps they'll have to travel a long way to get to a blue state to then get an abortion. But this is a big deal, man. This is a huge deal. This is precedent being overturned clearly in a scathing way. So they continue in the article and they say, deliberations on controversial cases have in the past been fluid. Justices can and sometimes do change their votes as draft opinions circulate, and major decisions can be subject to multiple drafts and vote trading, sometimes until just days before a decision is unveiled. The court's holding will not be final until it is published, likely in the next 2 months. The immediate impact of the ruling, as drafted in February, would be to end a half-century guarantee of federal constitutional protection of abortion rights and allow each state to decide whether to restrict or ban abortion. It's unclear if there have been subsequent changes to the draft. No draft decision in the modern history of the court has been disclosed publicly while a case was still pending. So this is an absolute first on that front. This has never happened before, that you get a leak out of the Supreme Court like this. And I wonder what actually happened behind the scenes that led to this being the case. The unprecedented revelation is bound to intensify the debate over what was already the most controversial case on the docket this term. The draft opinion offers an extraordinary window into the justices' deliberations in one of the most consequential cases before the court in the last 5 decades. Some court watchers predicted that the conservative majority would slice away at abortion rights without flatly overturning a 49-year-old precedent. The draft shows that the court is looking to reject Roe's logic and legal protections. So that's another point that I've heard floated. I think Matt Iglesias just said this on Twitter, that like a more sophisticated conservative court, what they would do is come up with some legal rationale to further weaken Roe's protections. And so this way, they don't get the backlash of outright rejecting Roe, but they still get the desired outcome of like effectively banning abortion without it being banned. This is an instance of, no, they're just going all the way. They're like, you know, fuck the foreplay, let's get right to it. And they're like, let's just overturn Roe and have a scathing take against it. Quote, Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. And far from bringing about a national settlement of the abortion issue, Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division. That's a hilarious thing to say. As if, like, what they're doing now will not do the same thing. Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division. As opposed to this move from the Supreme Court, which, of course, will bring everybody together in unity. Come on, that's so silly. A person familiar with the court's deliberations said that 4 of the other Republican-appointed justices, Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, had voted with Alito in the conference held among the justices after hearing oral arguments in December, and that lineup remains unchanged as of this week. Wow. The 3 Democratic appointed justices, Breyer, Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan, are working on one or more dissents, according to the person. How Chief Justice John Roberts will ultimately vote, and whether he will join an already written opinion or draft his own, is unclear. Did I butcher that sentence? How Chief Justice John Roberts will ultimately vote, and whether he will join an already written opinion or draft his own, is unclear. Okay, got it. The document labeled as a first draft of the majority opinion includes a notation that it was circulated among the justices on February 10th. If the Alito draft is adopted, it would rule in favor of Mississippi in the closely watched case over that state's attempt to ban most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. Now, you know, again, if this goes through, and it appears like that's exactly what's going to happen, the decision is going to be that Roe is struck down, they don't even need to do these weaselly, like, 15 weeks of pregnancy, and after is banned. They could just do abortion is totally banned in Mississippi. And they will, by the way. A Supreme Court spokesperson declined to comment or make another representative of the court available to answer questions about the draft document. Politico received a copy of the draft opinion from a person familiar with the court's proceedings in the Mississippi case. There you go, along with other details supporting the authenticity of the document. The draft opinion runs 98 pages, including a 31-page appendix of historical state abortion laws. The document is replete with citations to previous court decisions, books, and other authorities, and includes 118 footnotes. The appearances and timing of this draft are consistent with court practices, so they know it's real. The disclosure of Alito's draft majority opinion, a rare breach of Supreme Court secrecy and tradition around its deliberations, comes as all sides in the abortion debate are girding for the ruling. That's weird. It's also weird to say grinding, though. Speculation about the looming decision has been intense since the December oral arguments indicated a majority was inclined to support the Mississippi law. Under long-standing court procedures, justices hold preliminary votes on cases shortly after argument and assign a member of the majority to write a draft of the court's opinion. The draft is often amended in consultation with other justices, and in some cases, the justices change their votes altogether, creating the possibility that the current alignment on Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization could change. Look, I'd like to believe that, but I honestly think that's wishful thinking. I don't think it's going to change. The Chief Justice typically assigns majority opinions when he is in the majority. When he is not, that decision is typically made by the most senior justice in the majority. Okay. Exceptionally weak. I'll just read a little bit more of this for you guys. A George W. Bush appointee who joined the court in 2006, Alito argues that the 1973 abortion rights ruling was an ill-conceived and deeply flawed decision that invented a right mentioned nowhere in the Constitution and unwisely sought to wrench the contentious issue away from the political branches of government. So, I mean, this all gets into a deeper conversation about how conservative justices view their role and how liberal justices view their role. The typical idea among liberal justices is that the Constitution is like a living document. And what they mean by that is, look, times change, history moves on, We don't live in a country where people shit in outhouses and wear powdered wigs. So we have to interpret the laws in a way that is consistent with modernity. The argument on the conservative side is, no, interpret everything exactly as it was written and be rigid and go by the letter of the law, and that's the end of the conversation. And so you get clashing philosophies in terms of how you should interpret the Constitution. And there's always going to be that divide, but, you can see how with such different philosophies, you can get totally different decisions based on the same document and the same set of facts. And so here we are. Obviously, it's a majority conservative court, and they're deciding to slap down the precedent of Roe versus Wade. Alito's draft ruling would overturn a decision by the New Orleans-based Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals that found the Mississippi law ran afoul of Supreme Court precedent by seeking to effectively ban abortions before viability. See, that's what I sort of referred to earlier. Roe versus Wade came up with a trimester standard, but then after that, they changed it to the viability standard. So basically, the idea is before viability, states cannot regulate away abortion and cannot ban abortion. So up until a certain point, you have a right to an abortion. Now, after viability, and once you start talking about, the nervous system is developed in the fetus, and you start talking about late-term abortions, there states have a right, if they'd like to regulate the abortion procedure and sort of ban late-term abortion, things of that nature. But there's been a number of laws that popped up on purpose, by the way, which would question the constitutionality of Roe. And now the court is saying, look, these sorts of restrictions are consistent with the Constitution. You can basically do whatever you want in terms of abortion in the various states. If you want to outright ban it, that'd be totally fine. So again, hear me now, quote me later. If this ruling drops, which it almost certainly will, then what's going to happen is, over 20 states in the country within, the next 5 years will just fully ban abortion. So it won't even be, you have a right to one up until 15 weeks. It won't even be that. Roe's survey of history ranged from the constitutionality irrelevant to the plainly incorrect. Roe's survey of history ranged from the constitutionally irrelevant to the plainly incorrect, Alito continues, adding that its reasoning was exceptionally weak and that the original decision has had damaging consequences. As opposed to what? This decision? What kind of consequences will this have? The inescapable conclusion is that a right to abortion is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions, Alito writes. Okay, look. To start rolling back what's viewed by the majority of Americans as social progress is going to lead to a colossal backlash. That's what's going to happen. So now they would say, because they're on the court, hey, the political whims don't matter to us at all. We just interpret the law and we give you guys that. So that's what they would argue. But they also aren't making these decisions in a vacuum. These decisions have consequences. So this will be viewed as a huge win among the socially conservative and the right wing, or I should say the far right, because there are plenty of pro-choice people who lean right or vote Republican. But Joe Biden and the Democrats may have just gotten a colossal gift for the midterms. The Democrats are phenomenally unpopular. They're not delivering on their agenda. Build Back Better crashed and burned. Joe Biden sitting there, twiddling his thumbs as he's got all these executive orders that could fix a lot of issues in the country. He could legalize marijuana through executive order. He could abolish student loan debt. He's not doing much right now. He's not doing almost anything right now. And as a result of that, his approval rating has been as low as 33%. There's some polls that just had it bounce up, but I think on average he's 41 or 42%. It's abysmal. The Democrats are cruising for a bruising in the midterms, but this right here may have just fired up all Democrats. This right here may end up helping the Democrats where they don't even have to do anything. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to say anything. But this is going to light a fire underneath the ass of the people who vote Democratic. So, watching the political landscape and watching how everything's been going, it's been conventional wisdom for a while now that Republicans are going to absolutely dominate in the midterms. This may have just changed that. Now, we're going to have to wait and see. But there's definitely going to be a backlash to this. There's definitely going to be a backlash. So the article goes on and on here. I won't read it all for you, but you guys get the gist of it. Now, let me show you this. So this is a Gallup poll, and they track this over time. Okay? Look at this. From 1975 all the way up until 2021. Do you think abortion should be legal under any circumstances, legal only under certain circumstances, or illegal in all circumstances? The most popular position is legal only under certain circumstances. That's basically what Roe v. Wade facilitates. That in every single state, abortions are legal up to a certain point. The state government cannot regulate away the right to an abortion before a certain line, that line of viability. But then after that, if they so choose, they can regulate late-term abortions and ban it. Okay? So this 48% is Roe versus Wade. Now, the second most popular position, 32% say it should be legal under any circumstances. Under any circumstances. The least popular position, illegal in all circumstances. It's only 19% in the country. 19%. And this is going to be, in very short order, the case in every Republican state in the country. In over 20 states, they're going to outright ban all abortions. That's what we're looking at. So there's going to be a backlash. It's kind of a wild thing, isn't it? When you see, it's one thing for progress to move slowly in the right direction or sort of be stalled. That's one thing. We're all used to that. It's a totally separate thing when you talk about setting back the clock. When you talk about a colossal setback where we had this thing, which is viewed socially in a very positive sense, that we moved in the right direction, and then they just rewind the clock and set us back and usher in a more primitive and more draconian system. That's a very rare thing. Because everybody has this idea of the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. The old Martin Luther King idea, right? Well, this is an instance of it was bending towards justice, and now they're bending it all the way back. So we're going in the wrong direction. I'm telling you, this is going to lead to a backlash. People are not going to like this. They're not going to like this. And the Democrats, it's a Hail Mary pass for the Democrats here. It's what just happened. So, crazy circumstance now. An overwhelmingly conservative court is now, making overwhelmingly conservative decisions. And we're all going to live with those consequences. This is, I honestly, I didn't think I'd see this in my lifetime, but I started to think maybe we'll see it as soon as Trump got to pick all those Supreme Court justices. I was like, oh, this stuff, it may be going down shortly. And now it's most certainly going down. So there's your news. I wish I had something better for you, but I'm here to give you guys the facts and give you guys the information, and that's what it is. So yet again, Politico exclusive, Supreme Court has voted to overturn abortion rights, draft opinion shows. Wild stuff.